The 2025 Mexico City Grand Prix just took place. The race was crazy, weird, retarded, and as usual, the FIA was a disgrace. And let's go ahead and talk about how each driver and team has performed, starting with the worst performers of the Grand Prix weekend and ending with the highest scorers of the main race, starting with Aston Martin. The bad run of luck for Fernando Alonso continues. I think he is mentally in a similar position as the Alpine drivers. The only difference is that the Alpine drivers know that they won't be scoring any points or will be competing for any significant positions on the track. And the thing about Fernando Alonso from Aston Martin is that he doesn't. Then obviously we have Lance Stroll, who bottles qualifying and usually starts from P18, P19, P20. No wonder he has the highest amount of Q1 exits in Formula One history. And then in the race, because the race pace of the car is slightly better, he usually makes up some positions. Obviously, in the 2025 Mexico City Grand Prix, we had a few TNFs, so that definitely helped prop Lance Stroll up. And the best part about having Lance Stroll in the Formula One grid are his amazing insights in the post-race or the post-qualifying interviews, post any session interview. And just one word answers, extremely stoic. None of this results is going to affect his mentality. He's just, like a champion through and through. He doesn't need a trophy to be called a champion. So that is that. Anyway, we move on. I mean, the more I talk about Lance Stroll, the less I want to talk about the other team drivers, such is the mesmerizing nature of his character. So I guess we have to move on for professional reasons. Anyway, we move on. Racing Bulls. Absolutely dogshit weekend for these two guys. I had some hopes from Isaac Hadjar after he qualified into Q3, after he made it into Q3. I genuinely thought he would qualify better, but it seems that they have the opposite problem of the McLarens. Like earlier in this weekend, McLaren were quicker in qualifying but slower in race. But the opposite is true for the Racing Bull drivers. They're quicker in qualifying, or at least Isaac Hadjar is, because Liam Lawson cannot qualify for shit. He is consistently getting out in Q1. And genuinely, I sometimes feel that Liam Lawson is the Lance Stroll of the Racing Bull or the Red Bull family. I don't know. I mean, the primary reason why I think Liam Lawson got into Formula One is because his overtly confident nature. He just speaks like a champion and he just believes in himself the way all the other drivers do, but he just talks the talk a bit too much, and I think that definitely had played a part in his success in motorsports so far now. But Isaac Hadjar, man, just a little bit gutted for him. Nothing much he could have done. Lost a couple of positions at the race start, and then it was just playing catch up to the other people, and he didn't have good race pace. He confirmed it in the post-race interviews. Liam Lawson, as usual, crashed into Carlos Sainz, caused damage to Carlos Sainz's car, some sensor damage, and himself got, his race also ended because his car also sustained a lot of damage. He first pitted to change the front wing, then he tried a little bit, like a couple of more laps, but then it was pointless to continue because obviously he wasn't going to score any points. Isaac Hadjar himself, who started in P8, wasn't going to score any points. So, there was literally no question for Liam Lawson. A weekend to forget. I was hoping that they would be a little bit competitive in Mexico. I genuinely don't think there are plenty of other races or tracks left where these guys can go ahead and score some points, because I don't think they're going to be competitive in Vegas because the temperatures will be low, and you can say that it is a little bit like Mexico or Singapore, where they kind of struggled. I mean, Singapore was slightly better, but I don't think they're going to be competitive in any of the remaining tracks like Brazil or Qatar or Abu Dhabi even. If you look at their performances, I mean, Isaac is going to qualify well, but if he fails to convert this consistently, not consistently but often, like too often, so that it became a problem, then I genuinely don't think they're going to be fighting for too much in the constructor standings. They probably will be P8 or even P9, who knows. We move on. Williams. So where do we start? I mean, about Carlos Sainz, his race was pretty straightforward. He didn't maximize his qualifying runs. Not that. I don't think these guys particularly had pace to be competing for points. They could have scored some points considering other people DNF'd, but It's really hard to score some points when you're the one getting DNF'd. And then Carlos Sainz, his issues are just weird because he seems to be quick at the start of the weekend, then his pace fades out a little bit because he's in a midfield car and other teams find more pace compared to the Williams, which is understandable. Then in the race, because he starts from so far back, everyone around him is just hungry for track positions and they're usually inexperienced because they're midfield teams, and midfield team have like younger, less experienced drivers like Liam Lawson. And then because of the starting position, he gets into these situations in which he is colliding with other people, like incurring damage into his car. And in the 2025 Mexico City Grand Prix, a race where he won in a dominant fashion last year, he DNF'd because he had a collision with Liam Lawson. And in that collision, Carlos Sainz's car received some damage, some sensor damage. And because of that sensor damage, he was not able to slow the car like to the pit lane speed. Like in the pit lane, he was not able to, be within the speed limit. So every time he went into the pit lane, he was getting a penalty. Initially, he got a 5-second penalty for his first pit stop. Then he went for his second pit stop where he served the 5-second penalty. And then he oversped again. Then this time it was a drive-through penalty. So, I mean, it was just made sense for Carlos to go ahead and just retire the car, call it a day. It was not their day anyway. And with this type of damage, with these type of issues where they were just serving drive-through penalties and 5-second penalties, it didn't really make any sense. And this is the problem right now, because there are only a handful of tracks in which the Williams can be competitive. I'm thinking that in Brazil, they will be slightly competitive, and in Abu Dhabi, they can be a little bit competitive. But I guess we will see relative to other cars' position. And also, this is the problem with Williams. Even if they have pace, no pace, it doesn't matter. They just seems to get into these issues. This extra circumstantial things somehow just keeps on affecting these motherfuckers. Whether it is some people crashing into them, whether it is some car issue, whether it is like, I don't know. I mean, sometimes lightning strikes to their cars and it doesn't work. Then Alexander Albon, I mean, he had a pretty decent race. I guess you can tell he was starting so far from the back, and being in a Williams, it's not going to be easy to make that many overtakes so that you can go ahead and make it to some points. Thanks to some DNFs and whatnot, he made some progress, but it is really what it is. There is no question that these guys would have scored any points. No question. I mean, they wouldn't have scored any points anyway. Like that's what I meant. Anyway, we move on. Alpine. For once, it's nice to see Alpine as not the worst team in the weekend. You know, usually when I do this type of race weekend reviews where I review the performance of the drivers and the teams, it starts with Alpine because they're typically the worst performers. But thankfully this time they were not worst performers, because the worst performers had DNFs. They scored 0 points, and on top of that they had DNFs, so that's why they were worse performers than Alpine. So that's a great job done by Alpine by not being the worst performers. They still scored 0 points. Consistency is key because their car is crap. But at the same time, you can say that, okay, you know what, whatever, they at least brought the cars home. They at least didn't get into trouble. They got overtaken by whoever, left, right, and center. But the best part is, so far what I'm liking is, now Franco Colapinto is now closing significantly to Pierre Gasly. He is now within a tenth and a half of Pierre Gasly in qualifying pace. And in race pace, he is now getting his mojo back. He's now, defying team orders. That, of course, happened in the United States Grand Prix. But I think in the future, also in racing scenarios, Franco Colapinto is the type of guy who will not wait for team orders to make the overtake on his teammate. I think that's going to happen. So it's something to keep an eye on, pay some attention to, because right now there's really nothing we can look at Alpine and discuss. They have the horrible technology in terms of the engine and the power unit, and their car is not that well, and the upper management of their team are corrupt and crazy, and obviously apart from all of those drama situations, their performance is tragic. So there's really not much to talk about. So I guess we need to move on. Up next, we have Kick Sauber. So first of all, Nico Hülkenberg's weekend, I mean not weekend, but like the race, ended in the formation lap. He had some engine issues or some issues that was terminal. They couldn't fix it, and then he had to retire. I think this is the second time in 2025 Formula One season in which his race ended before it even began. So there's, it's absolutely unlucky. Similar to Fernando Alonso's luck. Fernando Alonso's luck in 2025 F1 season is similar to Nico Hülkenberg's luck in his entirety of his Formula One career, where he kept on getting closer to a podium position, but not quite. He could have actually got a sprint podium in the United States Grand Prix, but, he was taken out by Oscar Piastri. Anyway, let's talk about Gabriel Bortoleto. Great performance by him. Started P16, finished P10, made some nice overtaking maneuvers, made the most out of the pit stop strategies, and scored one significant point. These guys need to go ahead and score some points. I think in the previous race, Nico Hülkenberg scored some points in the United States Grand Prix, and now it's Gabriel Bortoleto. These guys need to keep on, getting back into the point scoring positions. I think there are a few more tracks in which they can be promising. I think in Abu Dhabi, that track could come in, play into their advantage. Then I think Brazil and Las Vegas aren't that bad for these guys. But I guess we will say, their car is a little bit good in types of just high traction zones and stuff like that. But at the same time, if there is a crazy race, you can definitely expect Nico Hülkenberg to go ahead and pick up the scraps. And Brazil is those type of crazy race, and Abu Dhabi, the season finale, usually gets crazy because it is the season finale. So I guess we will see. But the consistency of these two drivers is now very impressive, particularly from Gabriel Bortoleto. And Nico Hülkenberg's major improvement in the last few races, at least, is his qualifying performance. In the initial, I would say, in the first 60% of the season in 2025, he was horrible in qualifying. Nico Hülkenberg would, you could bet the house on it and still win, that he will get knocked out in Q1. Gabriel Bortoleto is typically the guy who had the upper hand in the qualifying sessions. But now it seems like Nico Hülkenberg has remembered that he is one of the fastest guys on track. So he is now gaining more and more confidence and qualifying better. So the next few races will be very interesting, especially considering the Racing Bulls performance. Recently they have been inconsistent. They have poor race pace. Sauber usually have better race pace, and they're able to execute the races a little bit well because they have the Red Bulls guy. What's his name? I forgot his name. They have the Red Bulls engineer. They have the Red Bulls trackside engineer, right? Sauber got from Red Bull. The guy worked alongside Max Verstappen in Red Bull. I forgot his name. Anyway, so their execution in races is actually pretty good. So considering that those type of fuck-ups happen for other teams, these guys can definitely go ahead and pick up some scraps. Anyway, we move on. Mercedes. So, it's a little bit funny and sad at the same time. So let's go step by step. So George Russell, he had a decent enough start, lost a bunch of positions at the initial lap, I think after turn 1. A lot of people ran wide, abused the FIA rule loopholes. They understood that the stewards are a bunch of moronic retards who will not punish them by, orchestrating a racing incident, because that's what happened. People who ran wide in turn 1 and gained position off of George Russell, those people, they orchestrated a racing incident. It was not real racing incident or a lap 1 turn 1 incident. They orchestrated it. They made it look like they had nowhere to go, so they had to go off to the runoff area, and because they were made to go into the runoff area by their rivals, they kind of got to keep the place. They didn't give the place back, or maybe they did, but they gained like 3 positions and gave 1 position back. You know what I mean? So in net, like in gross total, they gained 2 positions. So George Russell got fucked over just because of that. He played by the rules because he is the teacher's favorite pet, as you can expect. But unfortunately, that kind of went back and bit him in the ass. And after that, he was stuck behind Kimi Antonelli, and behind him was the pressure of Oscar Piastri. He was a little bit irritated in that situation because he had to maintain track position behind Kimi Antonelli, where his tires were getting cooked, and behind him Oscar Piastri was putting in massive amounts of pressure. So that's insane. So Russell tolerated all of that, then asked the team to make the swap and go ahead of Kimi Antonelli so he could challenge Oliver Bearman, which he failed to do. He initially said that I can challenge Bearman and then I can also go ahead and challenge Max Verstappen to go ahead for P3. We have the chance to fight for a podium, which could have been logical, but Oliver Bearman got hands, man. We will talk about him in a second. So he couldn't make the pass against Oliver Bearman, and towards the end of the race, the team again switched back the position because George himself said that if I don't make the move, then I will give Kimi the position back, and fair play to him, he did. But unfortunately for George Russell, started P4, finished P7. Not much of his fault, but at the same time, he has to understand that the stewards are retarded, FIA is corrupt as fuck, and he needs to go ahead and find loopholes and orchestrate racing incidents. It's all about perception. It's not about what the rules say. It's not about what the gentleman's racing agreement is. It's all about how stewards perceive incidents on the track. If the stewards perceive that you have been unfairly pushed off, then okay, you keep the position. It is what it is. You know what I mean? Or you go off track, make 3 positions at the race start, cut a corner, cut a chicane, whatever, and then you rejoin, you just let one guy pass. You just relinquish 1 position. So in total, you gain 2 positions, right? But you have to make it look like it's an incident. For example, I'll give another example where George Russell was being stupid, was 2025 Monaco Grand Prix. In the 2025 Monaco Grand Prix, the teams were playing back the pack up to help my teammate get a free pit stop strategy. How it works, so let's say there are 2 teammates, so one driver, the guy behind, will deliberately drive very, very slower to create a gap of like 20 seconds, and then the guy will just get a free pit stop, and then they will switch positions and they will do it again. George Russell was stuck behind the Williams of Alexander Albon in the 2025 Monaco Grand Prix, and Alex Albon was deliberately backing the pack up. What George Russell should have done is make a very aggressive overtaking maneuver and then say on the radio that, hey, he pushed me off the track, there was no room, fuck this, I'm keeping the position. He should have said that. But instead, he deliberately cut the chicane, he deliberately cut a corner and gained the place, and on the radio, he's like, you know what, I'm just going to get the fucking penalty. And because of that, he got a massive penalty. I think he got like a drive-through penalty or like a huge one. If he had made it look like an incident, he would have got a slap on the wrist, like a 5-second penalty or some shit, which he could have made up by just driving fast because there's a gap ahead and the Williams is not going to catch up to the back of the Mercedes, especially when the Mercedes of George Russell had tires that had life in them. So George Russell needs to go ahead and wrap his head around the fact that the world is not fair and the FIA stewards are a bunch of retards. And then, only then he will be able to unlock his full championship winning potential. But right now, he's fucking it up. Then Andrea Kimi Antonelli, pretty straightforward race. Could have extracted a bit more performance in the qualifying session, but it is what it is. Young rookie, couldn't really ask much from him. His pace was really good. I thought he would be able to attack Kimi Antonelli, but not Kimi Antonelli, Oliver Bearman. But, like I said, Bearman got hands. And Kimi was defending well against George Russell, so I guess that's pretty good practice for the future. I guess we will see how Kimi continues to perform. I think last few races after, I think since Monza. Yeah, I think after Toto Wolff has said that Kimi's performance was underwhelming in Monza, I think after that he has gotten his shit together. Since Azerbaijan, he has been performing really well. So I guess we will see how he continues to perform. We move on. Haas. So, Esteban Ocon. First, let's talk about Esteban Ocon, who is getting cooked by a rookie teammate. And that rookie happens to be my favorite rookie of the 2025 Formula 1 season. We'll talk about Oliver Bearman in a second. But Esteban Ocon, glad to see him go ahead and score some points. Absolutely horrible driver, bad person, hates his teammates, deliberately plans for their downfall. But despite all of that, I would give him like a 4 out of 10 driver in terms of like Formula 1 driving skills. So great driving from him, P11 to P9, not that impressive. Didn't really make that much of an impact because Oliver Bearman is just cooking. In qualifying, he's better than Esteban. In race pace, he's better than Esteban. Throughout the entire race, Oliver Bearman, in the first stint, he defended against Max Verstappen, which is insane. Making an overtake on Max Verstappen in turn 7 in Mexico to overtake Max Verstappen is insane. Then he defends against Max Verstappen for multiple laps in the first stint. Then on the second stint, he defends against the Mercedes pair, first against Andrea Kimi Antonelli and then against George Russell. Then in the third stint, he defends against the fastest car in the Formula One, in the 2025 Formula One season, the MCL 39, from the then championship leader Oscar Piastri. Oscar Piastri is not the championship leader anymore, thanks to Lando Norris. We will talk about them in a second. But Oliver Bearman defended for life against Verstappen, then from the Mercedes pair, and then from the Piastri. Verstappen managed to undercut him or whatever later on in the race. They had good aggressive strategy. But the other defenses worked perfectly well, and Oliver Bearman got his career best finish of P4 in a Haas, and he was driving like a madman. What a great driver. His overtake on Max Verstappen was so great. And a lot of people after the United States Grand Prix was talking trash about Oliver Bearman, and I didn't like it one bit. They were not giving him the benefit of doubt that he's a 21-year-old guy, he's young. Okay, he said something about Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki Tsunoda is a dog shit driver anyway, he has Yuki has overstayed his welcome in Formula One, I would say that. Okay, whatever, he misjudged and he blamed Yuki for a mistake that he instigated. Okay, whatever, nobody got hurt, nobody gives a shit. And then people started to talk trash about Oliver Bearman because he is close to get a race ban. He has 10 penalty points on his super license, and they're like, oh, he's close to getting a race ban. He shouldn't be criticizing Yuki Tsunoda. Shut the fuck up, man. The future world champion can do whatever the fuck he wants. Obviously, he's not going to be a future world champion if he joins Ferrari. But, he's a young guy. He's a rookie. There is a reason why we call rookies rookie. And he is fast. He is quick. Do you not remember how Max Verstappen was when he joined the sport? He was fast, he was quick, and he was mangling cars. He was, crashing into people and instigating collisions. We are seeing the same patterns with Oliver Bearman. And he's a great guy, and we all love him, especially on this channel. And I genuinely think that Oliver Bearman deserved to be the rightful driver of the day. Phenomenal driving by him, amazing driving by him. At the start of the season, I had mixed feelings about Haas, because on one side I wanted Esteban Ocon to have an absolutely dog shit of a season. I wanted him to go into depression. But on the other side, because I like Ollie, I wanted him to have a good season, so I wanted Haas to have a good car. But I'm thinking, like, if Haas has a good car, Esteban Ocon, by virtue of his experience, is going to extract more performance. So if my wish were to come true about Esteban having a bad season, it also meant that Ollie will also have a bad season. But God is great. God thought that, you know what, I can grant two of his wishes in the same time. Esteban Ocon is continually poorly performing, especially in United States Grand Prix. He was depressed after the race. And overall in the season, if you look at the performances of Esteban and Oliver Bearman, Bearman is performing very good. Every time Esteban fails to score points and qualify well, which is more often than not, he just blames the car like a little bitch. This is one of the main reasons why he got fired from Alpine. Flavio Briatore said that Esteban Ocon is a spoiled brat. He's always blaming the fucking car, always talking shit about the engineers and the technical developments. Fuck him. And he's doing the same shit in Haas. He's always saying the car is just not where we want it to be. We're just trying what we can. Shut the fuck up, bruv. You don't know how to drive. You're getting your ass whooped by a fucking rookie. Consistently. And Bearman defended against the Mercedes pair and Piastri on race pace. So stop whining about the fucking car and drive well. So anyway, extremely happy for Oliver Bearman. Big shout out to him. And, happy that he is giving depression to Esteban Ocon. We move on. Verstappen.com Racing. Okay, this is the big one. So when the race started, before the race began, I predicted that Max Verstappen will pull 10 points closer to the championship lead. So before the start of the race, Max Verstappen was 40 points behind the championship leader, and now he's 36 points. So I predicted a 10 points closing rate. I predicted that Max will close by 10 points, but he didn't. He closed by 4 points, which is not that bad if you think about it. right? Things could have been much, much worse. And it looked like he would close it by 9 points. He would get 3 more points by overtaking Charles Leclerc. That poorly timed virtual safety car fucked Max Verstappen, fucked his progress. A few amazing things about Verstappen's performance is that right from the beginning of the race, he knew that he didn't have the fastest car and he still got on the podium. This is giving me the Singapore vibes. And then he exploited the rules of the FIA as much as possible. He had that wheel banging with Lewis Hamilton and got the better of him, like at least eventually, because right after that, Lewis Hamilton maintained track position. Then he outbraked himself, locked up, went off track, and then got himself a 10-second penalty, allowing Max Verstappen to pip him. So, and after that, Red Bull's amazing strategy gave Verstappen some great dose of pace in the last stint, and he was attacking everyone and he was passing people, and he could have passed Charles Leclerc. He looked like if there was 2 laps remaining, which I think there was, he could have done that. And the virtual safety car, because of Carlos Sainz, kind of ruined Max Verstappen's chances of getting P2. It would have been sweet if he had gotten P2. But either way, 36 points, 4 Grand Prix remaining, including 2 sprint races. I think he still can do it. A lot of people will be saying that, in Mexico, his momentum got slowed down, which is only partially true. Because if you look at everything, yes, Norris had a dominant weekend. He got pole by a huge margin, had a great launch off the line, and was completely looking dominant. He won by 30 seconds, I think, 28 seconds or something like that. Before his first round of pit stop, I think he pulled about 28, 29 seconds on Charles Leclerc. And I think towards the end of the race, he also pulled about half a minute. So, yes, on one hand, it may look like that, Red Bull are having a bad time, but at the same time, Max Verstappen on a race where he shouldn't be on the podium, he should be somewhere like P5, P6. If you actually look at his race pace, he should have been overtaken. He should be finishing behind Oscar Piastri. Because initially, in the first stint, he struggled to even overtake Oliver Behrman in a Haas. That's how difficult it was. But yeah, and also I was saying, while I was watching the race, I was saying in the live stream that Verstappen needs to pull out some magical performance. Because in the last stint, after the pit stop, he was P7 or something like that. And he had to go all the way up to, P3. And it's difficult. It's not that easy to go ahead and make those overtaking moves in Mexico. So I was saying this, that Max needs to pull out some magic Max performance in order to keep 1 foot in and in order to stay in the title fight. And actually he did. Despite Norris's dominant performance, Max Verstappen still closed to the championship leaders by 4 points. It's not a big deal. It's not a big margin, big fancy number, but it's something. And then Yuki Tsunoda got screwed over by Red Bull. It seems that the Milton Keynes team are desperate to get rid of this guy. It's just really unfortunate that his last season in Formula 1, he spent getting used to a car which was designed around Max Verstappen and which is basically a shit box that only Max can drive. And then when he started to find a little bit of performance, a little bit of pace, both in qualifying and the main race, he started getting screwed over by the team. So that was, it's really unfortunate what's happening with Yuki Tsunoda. There's nothing much to say. His pit stop was like 10 seconds longer than it should have been. So he got screwed over. We move on. Ferrari. This is a very interesting one because when Lewis Hamilton qualified P3 for the main race, a lot of people said that he will finish the race P7. He finished P8, and those people were partially correct, almost correct. And in a way, it's kind of comical, because, on one side, you have to look at the positives that, yes, Lewis is rediscovering his pace and he has closed the gap to Leclerc significantly, and they are now executing the race weekends properly. But at the same time, it's kind of comical because it rhymes with Carlos Sainz situation. Just like Carlos Sainz has pace, but he's incapable of converting that pace into points on a Sunday. The same thing is now happening with Lewis Hamilton since the summer break. It's always the small issues here and there. Like in Singapore, he was performing decent and he had good pace. He was about to catch Kimi Antonelli. He was about to overtake Kimi Antonelli, and then his brakes faded, and then he started getting dropped like stone. He got overtaken by Charles, and then he just went backwards, and eventually he finished behind Fernando Alonso after that penalty. Now in the 2025 Mexico City Grand Prix, he was running P3, solid P3. It didn't look like anyone could have overtaken him. He was, holding his own against Oliver Behrman. Oliver Behrman was, defending well against Max Verstappen. Looked like nobody is going to challenge Lewis Hamilton. The only direction Lewis can go is forward. But unfortunately, he locks up turn 4. His fault entirely his fault. Locks up, goes off track, rejoins way ahead of Max Verstappen. You could argue that he was momentarily ahead of Max Verstappen, but he rejoined way ahead of Max Verstappen. He didn't need to rejoin that hard. And so that was deemed as gaining an unfair lasting advantage after you leave the track. And unfortunately for him, the other drivers who did it, they did it at lap 1, turn 1. So that was kind of interpreted as the racing incident. But what Lewis did, it was a deliberate action of breaching the rules and displaying unsportsmanlike conduct. That's why he got slapped with a 10-second penalty. It is what it is. It's really, really unfortunate. The penalty is harsh. Should have been a 5-second in my opinion. But these are the type of Grand Prix that happen, and Lewis Hamilton is, still away. I mean, it really looked like Ferrari would score a double podium today, but, just really unfortunate. Hopefully, in Brazil, a track that Lewis loves, they will have some performance. But, you never know. Is the next race in Brazil or Las Vegas? I think it's in Brazil. Either way, Brazil probably Lewis's best hope. And nothing much to say about Charles Leclerc. Great performance, started P2, finished P2. I think he also cut the corner in lap 1, turn 1, but it was a racing incident, so that's okay. I think Lewis had the upper hand going into turn 1, and I think he could have made the overtake on Charles Leclerc. But at the same time, Leclerc, managed to exploit the rule book properly because he's from the Max Verstappen generation. And he maintained the upper hand, well managed. He was way behind Lando Norris, and this was the problem. I was initially hoping that Leclerc would have a better launch than Lando and he would get the lead. And he would keep Lando behind for long enough for Max Verstappen to catch up and undercut him. But, that was a dream which is too good to be true. But either way, Leclerc gets another podium, back-to-back podiums right now. Great performance by him. Lewis Hamilton just got unlucky. A little bit of his mistake. He shouldn't have rejoined the track way ahead of Max Verstappen. But, the stewards are retarded in which they frankly decide to punish some people and not punish some people. And a lot of people who say that the Formula 1 stewards, the FIA, are biased and they help British drivers. This is your answer. They don't. I will not listen any comment about British bias by looking at how they penalized Lewis Hamilton but didn't penalize Max Verstappen, didn't penalize any of the other drivers who cut the corner in lap 1, turn 1 and gain an unfair advantage, a lasting advantage nonetheless. George Russell got fucked over. Even Fernando Alonso talked about it. Do you have any idea? If Fernando Alonso talks about an injustice, it is a literal injustice. It is what it is. Either way, we move on. Let's go to the championship leaders, constructors champions, McLaren boys. Nothing much to say about Lando Norris. Absolutely dominant weekend. He is now bringing the fight back on to Oscar Piastri. I think he is now leading the World Championship by 1 point. And 4 races to go head to head, and he looks like he has the more consistent upper hand. Towards the end of the weekend, it looked like Oscar Piastri, somehow managed to find some extra pace in his McLaren. His last stint, when he was chasing Oliver Behrman, he went through the Mercedes. He overtook both of the Mercedes and stuff like that. Not both of the Mercedes, but he had good pace compared to the Mercedes. So looks like Oscar Piastri finally has some good pace. He didn't start the weekend off well, and he but he was explaining in the post-race interviews that the first 18 races of the season, my car was quick, I was driving in the same style, but now it seems to be a little bit off. I don't know if that's a legitimate excuse or if it's a psychological consequence of Max Verstappen closing in and his teammate also putting in consistent performances. Maybe it's because of that. I genuinely believe that Oscar Piastri is, mentally he's not in the right space. That's why he's not finding the right setup. That's why he's not as quick as he used to be. But according to Oscar Piastri, it's some technical gremlin. So I guess they will figure it out or won't. But I think it's a psychological problem with Piastri and he needs to get his shit together. If Lando, the way he performs and the way Max and Red Bull are ready to pounce on every opportunity that lies in front of him, Oscar Piastri is at a significant disadvantage. Significantly huge disadvantage because your racing skills, Piastri's racing skills, are definitely not on the level of Verstappen in terms of race pace and raw qualifying pace. One lap pace. It's not as good as Lando Norris. So he needs to go ahead and get his shit together, get every bit of performance he can, because in 2026, new rules, you don't know what the pecking order is going to be. Even if Mercedes, designs the most dominant engine of all time, I mean, there's still a lot to a Formula One car than just the engine. So again, Oscar Piastri needs to go ahead and get his head around, because this way he's just throwing the world championship away. There's not much to talk about. I will create a different video about Piastri's mentality, because right now it seems like he's just blaming the car and blaming on finding technical gremlins, but in reality it's all about his mentality and he's just got spooked. So there it is, and I guess we will see if he bounces back in the next race. So thank you for watching, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.